chair of the IARJ, International Association of Religion Journalists, and I will be moderating today's dialogue. Today, as you all know, we begin from South Asia and West, the first of the series of dialogues being organized by the International Association of Religion Journalists. The theme is religion and politics, a human rights question for the minorities. In the following weeks, the dialogues will move from one continent to another, and IARJ journalists will rack their brains to grapple with the burning issue confronting the world. Let me first introduce our panelists today. We have Waqar Gilani from Pakistan, Indiwari Amuatte from Sri Lanka, Priyadarshini Sen from India, and Mir Afroz Zaman from Bangladesh. The program is being live streamed on IARJ Facebook page. Religion, as we all know, is a system of belief that acts as an anchor holding mortals as they navigate the storm-tossed sea of life. On the other hand, politics is the art of addressing the basic questions of food, clothing, and shelter. Now, is there any connection between religion and politics? Well, Hinduism can help you find the answer with its dictum of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. It means human life revolves around the cycle of dharma, that is religion, artha, meaning wealth, and kama, meaning desire, while moksha means liberation. Significantly, in this order, religion comes first. It means the key to happiness is to satisfy one's desires for wealth and physical well-being, that is the domain of politics, keeping in mind first and foremost dharma, religion, that is the belief system that teaches love and compassion for all. Well, now we are going to see how the two play out in the four countries of India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. I will ask a few questions and request our distinguished panelists to restrict their presentations to 3 minutes per question. I begin with our friend from Pakistan, Waqar. Waqar, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
And Waqar, can you please briefly give us an idea of the religion landscape in your country and explain to what extent religion permeates the political processes? How popular are political parties that use religious platforms, and to what extent are they a polarizing factor? Waqar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Uday Basu, and I'm very honored to be on this panel and on this platform of IARJ. So I'm one of the South Asian representatives here. So let me start with some historic background of the country, because if people do not know about that, so it will help them to understand how religion and politics are entwined in this country. So Pakistan actually is considered 6th largest population of the world, and it is 2nd largest Muslim population of the world after Indonesia. So with a population of 221 million, according to the latest census, and nearly 96% or even more than 96% population is Sunni Muslim population in the country, and rest a very few percentage of Hindu community and Christian community and some other religious minorities. So the country was created in 1947, dividing India by the British Empire and then Muslim wanted a separate state to exercise their religious rights at that time because they were afraid that maybe the Hindu majority India is not giving them that political and religious rights. So that is why the country was created after a political movement. And basically, we can say that this movement itself, which was for the creation of this country, was a religious freedom movement, basically. And but interestingly, despite partition, still a large number of Muslim population, almost equal to Pakistan's population, up to 21 million, still lives in India. And some of the areas were not divided at that time, and many families, they did not prefer to actually migrate to new land, and they prefer to live in India. So but we can say that Pakistan is a predominantly Muslim majority country, and historically the clergy, Muslim clergy at that time actually opposed the creation of the and division of the subcontinent and united India, and they wanted that Muslims should live there and they should get their rights there through the political freedoms. But we see in the country that after some years, in late 50s and then 60s, religious movements started in the country, and they were primarily against the Ahmadiyya sect in Islam at
Waqar,
that time.
you have 1 more minute for
Okay.
this question. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I will take a little while in that because we
Yeah,
have
okay.
to give this background important to address the other question as well. But we see the religion and politics actual linkage from 1970s, when that time's Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was considered a socialist and progressive leader, he actually made his own socialist party. And then after some years, we saw that religious movements started actually opposing that government. And we see a big religious alliance at that time. And actually, ultimately, Mr. Bhutto had to submit to different religious demands of those opposition parties and pressures. For example, he banned public consumption and selling of alcohol, which was earlier allowed. Later, he passed a constitutional amendment in the parliament declaring Ahmadiyya sect, which was a sect of Islam earlier, declared them non-Muslims. But even then, he couldn't save his government, and later we saw a bigger military regime with the same religious agenda, and that remained in power for 11 years. And during that, we see that he further submitted to the demands of these religious parties. And he actually introduced severer blasphemy laws, severer anti-Ahmadi laws, and other Islamic laws. Those were opposed by the progressive and socialist forces at that time. And since then, we see gradual actually linkages of politics and religion in the country. And no political party, even in 20 years back when Pervez Musharraf, another army and military dictator was there, he tried to bring some reforms against these religious laws. But there was street agitation against him and he stopped that movement. So the point is that religion has so much actually taken like roots in the politics of the country that it is very difficult that if a step which is taken by a government in the name of Islam or religion to take back that or bring some reforms in that. And what is happening latest, we see that in the past few years, we see another introduction and emerging of a far-right religious parties, which is Tehreek-e-Labbaik, which is using blasphemy as its central agenda. And it emerged as the fifth largest party in terms of gaining votes in 2018 general elections. So to cut short and conclude, actually religion, actually these parties never came into power. They never won majority in the parliament. But the agenda they use actually is actually very mainstream political parties had to submit to their demands. And that actually endangers and affects rights of the other religious minorities gradually. And it is developing extremism in this society.
It's pretty bad. Yeah. Now, next, let me turn to Indiwari in Sri Lanka, and let's see how Sri Lanka is facing this problem. Indivari.
Thank you, Uday, and hello to fellow panelists. To give you a brief on Sri Lanka, I think it's important to note here, firstly, that Sri Lanka is, we do have a multicultural society here. Like other nations in South Asia region, Sri Lanka has a diverse population, various communities. Do you hear me? Like other nations.
Yeah. So go ahead, yeah.
Okay. Various communities profess four of the world's major religions: Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity. The major ethnic groups include not only the Sinhalese and the Sri Lankan Tamils, who compose 74 and 12.6% of the population. But also we have Indian Tamils, which is about 5.5% of the population, who view themselves as separate from the Sri Lankan Tamils, as well as Moors of Muslim origin, which is around 7.1%. And Burghers with linkages to the early Dominion period of the British, the Dutch, and the Portuguese, and other people of mixed European and Sri Lankan descent. That's around 0.4% of Sri Lanka's population. Malays too, 0.4%, and a tiny percentage of others, including the Aboriginal Vedas, who are considered to be the island's original inhabitants. Now, in a society as diverse as Sri Lanka's, social divisions have had a direct and weight of an impact on how politics run. Matters of religion, ethnicity, and language have become public rather than private issues. Within the island's much smaller geographical area, we talk about India being 60 times larger than Sri Lanka. And here, this tiny island nation, the pearl of the Indian nation, as we have been known as in ancient times, politics have become polarized because the politically prominent groups are few in number and clearly defined as in terms of language, custom, religion, and geographical region. Successive governments, however, although they have attempted to adopt an impartial role in relation to ethnic rivalries, they have failed to a larger extent. And the importance of this, the criticalness of this problem was highlighted mostly after the Easter Sunday attacks of 2019 here in Colombo, which shook the nation. This followed after the Christchurch attacks. And yesterday on my show, we exposed videos, footage of the extremist movement, the terrorist who detonated himself, and a group of other attackers who got their families involved, including a pregnant wife of theirs, in these attacks, where they divulged the motivation, the objective, and the kind of thinking behind these attacks. So these are exclusive footage. I invite all our viewers also to take a look at that program, because that gives us an understanding of the kind of ISIS and other extremist movements that are spreading this ideology, not just in South Asia, but in other parts of the region, because this is a matter that is battering modern day countries that are tackling other issues as well. So at the same time, I think I don't want to take much time. I'd like to move on to the next
just
question.
1 more minute. You've just 1 more minute
Yes.
for this segment.
Sure, that you have for the rest of the panel as well. But to talk about Sri Lanka, I think something that needs to be mentioned very clearly is that we have political parties which have been identified in recent times by the religious faith, or the faith or religion that they practice and they follow. So for example, you have a Buddhist party, you have a Muslim party. Similarly, you have the All Tamil Congress too, Lanka Tamil Darshakachu, the Muslim Congress too, the Buddhist People's Alliance. So this sort of led and gave importance to the necessity for people of different faith to be segregated, separated, and in isolation to practice their faith, or to promote and demand for their rights or their recognition in society. However, prior to that, we faced a 30-year war, which not necessarily was a lead up from religious disparity, but due to ethnic and cultural disparity and disharmony rather. 10 years after the end of the civil war, that's when we saw the Easter attacks in 2019, and that led to a further socio-economic impact and cultural impact in Sri Lanka. And now we are talking about revamping regulation. Now we're talking about the need to identify and ban hate speech, to ban parties that practice religion over politics, where religion should be a private matter, not brought to state affairs. But of course, in Sri Lanka,
not as a polarizing factor. Yes,
correct.
Yeah,
and
right.
Another factor I couldn't mention today before I hand over to you is that by the Constitution of Sri Lanka is identified as a Buddhist nation. That is because of the age-old 2,500 years of historical, the cultural aspects of this country being a Buddhist nation. Having said that, other religious people of other religion, faith, have continued to live in harmony, peace, in a very harmonious Sri Lankanness that they built over years. Muslims practiced a local Islam. Christians practiced a locally inbuilt Christian faith and culture. So did Hindus and the Buddhists too. It's a very unique culture that we have been having until the kind of extremism that spread from the Middle East overtook the Sri Lankan way of life.
Okay, I understand. Now I will turn to Priyadarshini from India. India has been making headlines as being the vortex of this conflict between religion and politics. Priyadarshini, could you please throw light on how things are panning out in India?
Sure, thank you very much for your question, and good evening to all those who are present for the session. So I'll jump straight to the present times, and because it's a very current subject, and religion is the most significant, at least one of the most significant factors that has caused political cleavages, tussle for power, as well as coalition building activities. And political movements have been organized, especially in recent times, in a way that assures the existence of community-based politics. And this becomes even more significant in election season or in the run-up to the election season, where we see a spurt in inflammatory speeches, communal tensions, as well as riots, breaking out in different parts of the country, especially in very polarized settings. And political leadership, not surprisingly, is focused on polarizing voters and peddling hate, which has gotten increasingly popular in recent times. And to talk of some current issues that are very present in India right now is that recently the government enacted laws to deny citizenship rights to a specific community. And it led to massive protests across the country, spanning different communities, arrests and censorship multiplied. But the gathering movement was viciously sidetracked by the Delhi riots that disproportionately affected minority communities. And the popularity of the leaders who were peddling hate has only grown steadily in recent years.
Peddling hate and also, Priya, peddling hate and
sure.
also distorting religion.
Yes, absolutely. And, Facebook's data scientists in 2019 and 2020 found that, there were huge spikes in the prevalence of inflammatory content, especially in 3 specific languages, English, Hindi, and Bangla. And that coincided with the start of the citizenship rights protests, as well as the first pandemic lockdown that happened in India. And Uday, now just jumping to the present time, the immediate present, there are major elections coming up in India next year across different states. And we are already seeing so many incidents of polarization and disempowerment of minorities. To speak of one such instance, I could think of the Northeastern state of Tripura, where Hindu nationalists have gone on a rampage over the last few weeks, attacking mosques and targeting Muslim neighborhoods and shops, in response to anti-Hindu attacks that took place in Bangladesh a month and a half ago. And the police have just been quiet bystanders. And instead of cracking down on these violent outbursts, they have only cracked down on those who have been speaking out against these communal outbreaks, and suspending Twitter handles, and even subjecting a lot of people who are just speaking out against communal tensions to criminal charges, as well as invoking the anti-terrorism law in some cases. Even in North India, we see that a lot of extremists are really going out there to stop Muslims from offering namaz in public spaces. And they're not just going there to stop them from offering namaz, but they're also going all out to kind of assert their Hindu supremacy and pride, and to push the minorities out. And we're seeing this even on social media, where say, to think of a very present issue like the interfaith marriage issue, where we're seeing the ads that are speaking out for equality and solidarity through ads that promote same-sex unions or interfaith marriages are being sidetracked, or they are being outright stopped. And those who are promoting these ads are being subjected to trolls and abuses and all kinds of threats online.
Which means a dark age is descending on India.
It has been kind of like this for a while, and it's just kind of multiplying over time. And now we've reached a stage where, every place that you go to, every instance that you see a lot of hate and a lot of polarization, and people really living in a very in an atmosphere of fear and conflict.
Okay. Unfortunately, I think our Bangladesh friend, the Bangladesh journalist, is unable to contact us. In that case, we would go ahead and go to the second question. And I will address this question to Walker once again. Walker, this question is for you. Now, how do the mainstream media in general cover this intersection between politics and religion? It means, do they face pressures from the public, religious organizations, or the government on how they should cover religion? How have they been fair to the minority faiths, or are they contributing to the interfaith tensions? Walker, it is your turn now.
Yeah, thank you. I think media persons are part of the same society in which they live. And mostly, if we say that we have a predominant Muslim society, we have some waves of extremism and polarization, then we see media is also polarized. And we see mixed things happening in media, actually. But generally speaking, I say that media does not cover the issues of religious minorities in that depth, with most factual checking and analytical approach. And generally we see that generally media is tilted towards the dominant religion. And perhaps that is why that minorities, we say, always voice for their rights, but their voice actually gets a small space in the media. Overall, we say that hence, like social media is also booming. We say also a lot of actually activism on social media, which is interestingly now helping mainstream media to cover religious persecutions and the matters of religion. Because when there's a lot of buzz on social media about one issue or one festivity, then electronic media and print media had to cover that, which I think is sort of a blessing here. But generally speaking, we see that when we talk about Islam, a dominant religion in the country, there's a lot of coverage of the religious parties.
But Walker, if I can ask you, just interrupt and ask you a side question on this. As you say about the role of the social media has become notorious in spreading hatred and disaffection among religious communities. So isn't that a negative aspect of social media as well?
Yeah, I think it's both good and bad, because I believe that social media is just a medium, and it is how you use that media according to your own ideology or thoughts. And if we see that most people are mischievous And that is why we see government also introduced a law, which is Prevention of Electronic Crime Act. It was introduced in 2016. And in that act, they also actually brought some sections which are related to Islam and blasphemy, for example. And for that reason, we see a lot of like cases being lodged for blasphemy against different people through social media. Or even if you like, sometimes we have seen the cases, if you like something on Facebook, or if you retweet something on social media, and if somebody wants to target you, they lodge a case. So this kind of a harassment on the basis of religion is also going on social media. And but on the other side, as I said earlier, that a lot of good things happening, because if there is a crime is happening, if religious persecution is happening, and that is not widely being reported in general media, they have to pick that mainstream media. And one of the other reasons we see the media challenge, as you mentioned, is that when there are religious festivities, for example, Diwali, for example, Holi, for example, Christmas, we see very good coverage on social media, on mainstream media, on print media. But when it comes in terms of religious persecutions, then it's a challenge to get very good news, which is based on exact facts, which is not tilted towards any group or any like-minded religious organizations. So that is a challenge. So good things are being portrayed. But when we talk about rights and when we talk about the persecution, then we see that this reporting is to some extent compromised in general media.
Okay. Now, Indiwari, what is the media scene in Sri Lanka now? How the media is reflecting this situation in Sri Lanka?
Thank you for this today. I think I'd like to also add to this overall conversation. I like to touch on the Easter attacks itself, because this gives us a massive understanding how the influence of social media to the political parties who have practiced interfaith and all kinds of detrimental political practices within the country has harmed the Sri Lankan society. I take your attention back to 2019. I've spoken about this at many a fora of the IARJ too, that of the social media ban that was implemented by the government of Sri Lanka shortly after the attacks. They made a decision to ban all social media. By this time, the government had some experience in social media bans too, because in some other parts of the country, due to mobs led by religious extremists, had escalated, and there was a need to control the spread of violent hate speech that was circulating on social media. At first, there was no indication from authorities as to when this ban would be lifted, but it continued for some time. And that effectively helped the government to contain, although we all know that via VPN and all, they started using, accessing social media, but there was a massive control of the kind of hate speech. But the lack of regulations, the regulatory environment was highlighted here. Now, if you go to the US Constitution, the First Amendment guarantees freedoms concerning religion, expression, assembly, and the right to petition. It forbids Congress from both promoting one religion over the other and also restricting an individual's religious practices. With all this, it has been discussed that propaganda sites on US servers under the First Amendment is not a crime, and it allows extremists such as the IS to proliferate their message online. And that is why Sri Lanka became a target. We had a lot of online services on cable television promoting their ideology, and there was no regulation within the Sri Lankan legal framework, or even the regulations that govern and monitor how media was run. Now we talk about media being controlled, lack of freedom, but this is an entirely different aspect.
Free for all. It's sort of free for all.
Yes. So that is why we had all these extremist ideologies being promoted on television, and there was no monitoring authority because of language barriers, either in Arabic or even there are even Buddhist extremists who were promoted. And sometimes they had more media coverage over others because that's more of that in our language we say that gave a kick to the audience. The ratings went up because they kept nurturing and nourishing that sentiment of the people, and that sort of the media did not understand the gravity of this at the time, and they didn't understand what sort of a damage they were creating within society. Again, I take you back to Easter Sunday attacks. After this, the media played a massive role in how the riots and the kind of religious tensions came about, how all this were brewing, and how media gave birth to an ugly devil in society.
Right. I understand. I think, fortunately, our Bangladesh friend Afroz Zaman is now in picture. Afroz, we have gone ahead of this discourse. Now, I would ask just one question to you. As a religion journalist, what challenges do you find in reporting religion, particularly the way religion is politicized?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Our friend, my friend is bosom friend by Mr. Uday Boshu. There was a lot of love for all those who took part in today's meeting. I love Uday Boshu, a prominent journalist from India, because he was taking a good initiative. He has taken a good initiative. Today's topic is communalism and the journalism in South Asia. I feel blessed to be able to take part in this meeting from Bangladesh. I'll discuss the background of a communal incident in Kumilla, Bangladesh on the 15th of last month.
Yes.
The most important contribution to the formation of nation and the state of the territory of Bangladesh is politics and newspapers, which have acted as the complements to each other. It can be said that these two elements are the main regulators of the establishment of the independent sovereign Bangladesh. Politics and the media have also acted as a controlling force for the division of the nation and the communalism. At one time, communal politics and their mouthpieces are always trying to prevent the Bengalis, Bengali, we are Bengali, Bengalis from being integrated for the sake of their own statehood.
Okay.
It has been seen at every period on the Bengali freedom movement, although they failed in the final battle. The Bengalis had to pay a heavy price for the communal evil, still have to pay. How many countries in the world have had to pay as much as Bengalis paid in 1971?
Okay, of course, I'll have to cut you short because you're running out of time.
I'm starting. I'm starting. I'm starting.
Priya to speak on the role of the media in containing this.
Because I've included media, where my role is, I mean.
Yes, Priyadarshini.
Yeah, Uday, thank you once again for your question. I'll just stick to the time frame to the extent possible. So despite the fact that religion is so important in political, social, as well as cultural spaces, unfortunately, it isn't a separate beat in India. And this should get far more specific coverage given the intensely communalized and polarized atmosphere in our country. And I'm not just talking about religio-political conflict, but also stories of interfaith harmony, interfaith practices. So these should be emphasized upon. But But it's also true that there's a massively shrinking space for secular media that wants to shed light on the realities on the ground. And journalists who are reporting for such media or tied to such media are regularly subjected to all kinds of threats and attacks and online trolls. So it becomes very difficult to exist under these circumstances. Not only their jobs, but even their lives are sometimes at risk for doing the job that they do. So, so people also have become, what is more challenging for journalists now is people have become very anxious to share their stories and to reveal details about their lives or their journeys, because they are also fearful of attacks and threats to their lives. So
they're muzzled. They're continuously getting muzzled.
Exactly. Despite that, some media are still kind of staying afloat through crowdsourced funding and are acquiring decent readership or viewership, keeping the faith in journalism alive. And they do cover interfaith stories, stories of hopes and aspirations and dreams, even though communal polarization more often than not takes center stage. But most media, especially I'm talking about televisual media, panders to the sentiments of the right wing and even right wing extremists. And they are kind of persistently providing slanted analysis, and they express and they present news in a way that kind of exacerbates communal tensions.
So these political parties or religious organizations masquerading as political outfits are having a stranglehold over the media in India.
Not just that, I think just politics and religion have become so closely tied together that it's difficult to separate. It's not always people who are masquerading. It's just sometimes very open and out there.
Okay, it's wonderful. We are having a wonderful session and stimulating debate. Would have loved to carry on, but of course we can't tax the patience of our viewers also. So every good thing has to come to an end, though we don't want it to come to an end, but it has to come to an end. So thank you so much, all of you. It was a wonderful session. My sincere thanks to all our panelists. This dialogue recording will be available in IARJ's YouTube channel as well as IARJ Facebook page. Please watch out for the announcement of the next dialogue on IARJ website, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Thank you very much, especially our readers, our viewers who have shown so much patience to listen to our panelists. Thank you so much. Bye-bye and good night.